Well, hello, everybody. My name is Jesse, and I am the Virtual Adventure Guide and Vice President of Education at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. I know we've got a wide new audience today, but today marks the first of an epic series in conjunction with solely Indian students in classrooms around the country. I'm so excited to dive in today with our very first broadcast in this series. And if you're unfamiliar with what we do programs connecting scientists, explorers, and conservationists with classrooms around the world. So I really encourage you to check out our website, check out our YouTube page with over 2,500 broadcasts featuring some of the coolest people and places on the planet. Now, today's broadcast series in conjunction with classrooms has been made possible by one of my favorite teachers in the whole world. Jai Sharma is an Indian educator who's done incredible work to bring kids out into nature and make sure that people, no matter where they're from, are connected and in love with the natural world. So I'm going to turn it over to him for a brief introduction before I bring in our special speaker guest expert today. So Jai, thank you so much for being a part of our broadcast today.
Thank you, Jesse, for this wonderful opportunity. And as I always love your talks and all. And one is you're always jolly, excited. You're jumping out of the seat, and as the name suggests. And I love to do that. And I'm always in the forest. So I'm bringing you today a student from maybe 20, 30 schools and different age groups, right from 8 to say 15, 16. Many of them will be in the Streamline or this event, and then StreamYard. Others will be watching it through YouTube or FB, wherever they are. I welcome you all, and thanks for being here. And as he said, I'm into nature and wildlife education, so it's my prime responsibility and passion to expose children to such wonderful experts from all over the world. And that's what Jesse has been helping me out, and I'm very thankful to him and Mariah for being here today. And let's not waste time. Take the kids them over to Mariah.
Well, Jai, thank you so much for all that. I really encourage people to check out your website. You highlight some of the more amazing work that you do there. And you're the first person to ever call me Jolly in a broadcast. So thank you very much for that, because there's one designation I want, it's Jolly. That's how I feel about life. I'm going to turn it over to our speaker today. We're joined live by extraordinary wildlife filmmaker, producer, writer, Mariah Wilson. So she's joining us today in the Eastern United States, and her work has taken her to 6 continents in pursuit of incredible stories, largely around wildlife. She's had the chance to feature some of the world's most charismatic animals, people working to conserve them, and so much more. And I'm so excited to kick off our program series with Jai and his students with you. Mariah, thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. All right, so I'm going to start with a presentation, and then any questions that you guys have afterwards, I'm here for you.
Spectacular.
Okay. Is that coming up all right?
You are good to go. Let's do this thing.
Great. All right. So, hello. My name is Mariah. I make documentary films, and I've filmed all kinds of stories over the years, from history to cultural stories to travel series. But I have to say, my favorite kind of story to tell about is wildlife and the people helping to study and protect animals all over the world. This picture is me sitting in a muddy clearing in Central Africa, getting some sun and relaxing. And elephants actually regularly drink from this water that I'm sitting in, though not at this very moment, obviously. Now, I want to talk a little bit about forest elephants. One of my most recent films is all about forest elephant conservation. They are a species in Africa that is slightly smaller than the more well-known savanna elephants. And instead of living on the open grasslands, they live in the really dense jungles in Central Africa. Forest elephants are known as a keystone species, which means they have a really big impact on the ecosystem around them. For instance, elephants are known for eating plants in one place and then walking many, many miles in any given day, and then pooping the seeds out in another place, which helps to transport the new seeds and germinate them. I call the picture to the right elephant poop trees. They really are kind of the gardeners of the forest, if you think about it. And in some ways, the ecosystems that they live in are much more similar to some of the ecosystems that the Asian elephants live in that you would see in India. So sometimes getting to where we need to go to film is a little bit of a challenge. In the above picture on the left, our car going out to the elephant clearings was blocked by a huge tree that had fallen in the path. So our scientist Clement, who you see down there on the right, and his team, they had to hack through that tree with an axe and then put chains around it and have the car pull it out of the way so we could keep going. Once we get to the clearings, we went up to this observation tower that they had built, and it's about 30 feet tall. And that's where we waited and observed and filmed the elephants, who are notoriously shy, the forest elephants in Africa. We also had to sleep on these towers at night because sometimes our best chance of seeing the elephants was at nighttime. So if you can imagine, 4 adult people had to squeeze into that top level of that tower. It's about, 10 feet by 10 feet or 3 meters by 3 meters, more or less. And there were 4 of us up there. So we kind of had to sleep at different angles in our sleeping bags, but we made it work. It was very cozy. And here I am up there on the right. That's the top of the observation tower. We have all of our camera equipment set up there. That's actually an infrared light that's on the attachment arm of the camera. And I'm sitting there just waiting for the elephants to come. There was a lot of waiting. A lot of filmmaking involves just sitting and waiting, to be honest with you. And on the left, that's one of the wooden bridges that we had to cross to get from our camp over to the clearings where the elephants were. Now, this next video is a little bit goofy, but sometimes, like I mentioned, we have so much waiting that we do that we get a little silly. So here, my cinematographer was trying to frame up a shot, and I was brushing my teeth. And then, I saw him moving the camera back and forth and just decided to, get a little bit into it and just help him. This is me helping. He found it extremely helpful. And that's our camp in the background, actually, too. The tarps over there, our tents were underneath there to protect from the rain. Okay. So we finally, after waiting a long time, did get footage of the elephants. And we saw them at nighttime with our infrared cameras. So the reason they have different coloring is because of the light that we were using. And that was the attachment that I mentioned on the camera earlier. Infrared light is one of the lights that we can't see with our eyes, but we can see with special cameras. And it shows us, basically, infrared shows us how warm things are by recording the heat waves that our bodies give off or that elephant bodies give off. So this is how we were able to capture these images. And it was really beautiful, actually. It was a whole elephant family that came out into the clearing, and they were drinking water and splashing and dunking. And you can see the darker circle around their heads from where they had been putting their heads in the water and getting wet. That's basically a water line around their head there. So even though our filming for Silent Forest is done, Clement continues to keep us updated on his clearing with photos like these. These are taken with a camera trap back in 2021, as you can see with the date. Camera traps are cameras that you can set up in the wilderness and basically just walk away from, and they're triggered by movement. So an animal will walk by and the camera will take a photo or a video. And they're very useful for wildlife films, and they can help filmmakers to capture images of shy or hard to see animals. And this is one of the other people we filmed with for Silent Forest, the forest elephant film. And her name is Sidonie. She was one of the first female eco guards in Cameroon. Her job, along with the other eco guards you see there in the picture, is to patrol the forests and make sure there are no poachers or illegal hunters that are killing protected species like the elephants. We also film with a young man named Arthur. He's from the Czech Republic, and he had a team of sniffer dogs that are used at traffic stops to search for illegal wildlife products like ivory and bushmeat. And the photo on the left is his team of dog handlers in Congo Brazzaville. And you can see one of the dogs in action at a traffic stop on the right, just searching the back of this truck for any kind of illegal contraband. And Arthur is currently using his dogs in Congo Brazzaville near a chimpanzee reserve that's run by Jane Goodall, actually. So elephants aren't the only animals I've filmed with recently. I also worked on a project about dolphins earlier this year called Caught. And it's actually a bit of a sad subject. It's about dolphin bycatch, which is basically something that happens when big fishing ships throw out huge nets that catch all kinds of marine life, not just the fish that they're trying to get. So sadly, sometimes dolphins get caught in these nets and they die. And so the main thing I learned from this shoot was to carefully consider the choices I make when I'm eating, since overfishing and bycatch are major problems. So I now no longer consume seafood. For this film, though, we luckily had to get some happier footage of the dolphins, so that would contrast with them being caught in the nets. So this was a fun part of the shoot. And this is a picture from a reef called Sataya, which is in the Red Sea near Egypt. And there's a huge number of spinner dolphins and some bottlenose dolphins here. So they call this particular reef the Dolphin House. And as you can see, we're completely surrounded by these dolphins. They're all very curious, coming right up to us. It was a really magical shoot, actually. And I have a video here of the dolphins from our underwater cameraman, who had the challenge of trying to keep up with them as they're swimming. They're pretty fast. But fun fact, dolphins sleep with half of their brain at a time. So they swim around still while they're asleep. These guys are currently asleep, and they're going much slower at the time that they're sleeping, so it's easier to keep up with them. So it's the ideal time to try to get a camera on them. That's a little jellyfish there you can see in the front, which the dolphins both eat and occasionally play with as if it's a ball. So yeah, this was us filming the dolphins as they were half asleep. Trust me, once they woke up, they went way faster, and our cameraman struggled to keep up with them. So the next slide I have is a little sad. This is a short film that I completed earlier this year called Rescuing Armenia's Bears. This is a bear named Nelson, and he is blind and receives no medical care, actually. And this project I was doing about rescuing bears in Armenia is kind of showing how they're in captivity in situations that's not so good for them. But there's a man who tries to negotiate for their release and then bring them to a sanctuary where, unlike this photo, you can see here they have a larger space that they can roam around. They have proper diet. They have medical care, and they have enclosures that are just better suited to their natural behaviors. So on the right here, we have a video of some newly rescued bears who are enjoying some fresh melon, as you can see, very enthusiastically eating. This is two cubs and their mother in the background. And this enclosure is a little smaller because this is the quarantine area that they're first brought to with this project. And so they'll spend a few weeks here, kind of adjusting to their new circumstances, eating a lot of melon, and then they eventually go to the larger enclosures that you see on the left. And we were filming in December, which is why it's kind of very brown and, a little bit barren. But during the summer months in Armenia, it's more lush and green and really beautiful. And these bears actually have swimming pools in their enclosures that they get to splash around in and have fun and just be goofy little bears. And the particular species that's mostly rescued here in Armenia is a Syrian brown bear, but they do have a couple of Siberian bears they've rescued too. Armenia is fairly close to Russia, and so sometimes the bears that are traded and trafficked in these areas are the Siberians, which are a very large species. And here you can see one of the captive bears stepping out. Oh, there's a Siberian in the back. You could see how much bigger he is, actually. That's their enclosure when it has a little more greenery in it. Okay. And this is Iman. He's one of the veterinarians who worked with the bears at this particular sanctuary to make sure that they're in the best possible shape and good health. And this picture actually captures one of the my favorite things about my work, which is meeting the people who want to help animals and getting to tell their stories and getting to know them. But, you know, watching bears splash around in a pool is pretty nice too. So that is my presentation.
Spectacular. Well, thank you so much, Mariah. What a life of adventure. So many cool things you got on the go. And so I'm going to dive in with questions now. Students on YouTube and Facebook, if you have any questions, please share in the chat. We've got our StreamYard crew that can share in the chat here as well. Jai, I might come to you for some of your own in a minute. But I want to begin with just highlighting how incredible it is you got the footage of the bears going outside for the first time. It's so... having done a lot of conservation broadcasts, getting to see animals where they're, you know, free for the first time or have that opportunity is such a wonderful experience. It's really one of my very favorite things in all of nature filmmaking. Is there a place that you've been that was the most challenging, whether it's a shoot, whether it's danger that you might have faced, anything that really jumps out as being a particularly trying time?
Yeah, I would say during the filming for Silent Forest for the elephant film, we were in those forest environments are really difficult. Like it's hot, it's humid, the terrain is very uneven, and we're hiking with a lot of gear. So just getting out to those clearings was punishing. And I'm fairly outdoorsy, but I have to say I was so impressed with all the people we were filming with the biologists, with the eco guards, because this is their office. They do this every day, you know, and me and my filming partner, we were like struggling. So it wasn't so much danger, but it was just like really hard conditions. And then like figuring out things like power and having enough, you know, electricity to charge our batteries was more of a logistical challenge. But yeah, that was probably the toughest place I filmed so far.
We got a great question that just came in from Lochranth. Was there a situation where you and your team got confronted by animals in any way, and how did you respond in that moment?
Good question. Let me see. No, our challenge during Silent Forest was actually finding the animals, finding the elephants to film. It was really hard. We only filmed them at night. It was great. We were just sitting there for days and days waiting like, oh my God, please. I mean, we saw other animals, but none of them were dangerous or posed any kind of threat. I will say, though, actually, the one thing that this brings to mind is many years ago, I filmed in India in Kaziranga National Park. And apologies in advance, by the way. I think there's some construction noise here, so I don't know if that's coming through or not.
We barely hear it. It's all good.
Okay, good. Okay, good. So yeah, I was in Kaziranga, and I was filming rhinos principally, which they have the Indian one-horned rhino there in great abundance, but they also have Asian forest elephants. And at one point, we were driving along and we came up on a herd of elephants, and one of the elephants started to charge a little bit. And that was, it was like a standoff, but he was kind of coming closer and closer. And we were in a car, so I felt pretty safe. But one of the eco guards we were with, he had a rifle, you know, for his protection. And all he had to do was make a slight noise of like cocking the gun. And that metal sound was enough that the elephants all fled. Yeah, it was interesting. I kind of wonder the implications of why they were so familiar with that sound, but it diffused the moment, put it that way.
One of my favorite things I've read recently about sort of animal biologists in the field, it was around elephants being able to sense all sorts of things. I mean, hearing, they've got incredible hearing. They've got infrasound hearing, so they can hear sounds that we can't even process. But it was clothing smells. So there was a woman who, she was studying elephants in East Africa, and she had a regular group that would join her, like some of the communities there, and they had a Maasai warrior join them in the car instead, and the elephants were freaked right out. They couldn't even see him. They could smell the clothing, and they affiliate that with danger because they've been hunted or they've been driven off with spears. And so it's fascinating to see how animals process some of these things. That's a great story.
Yeah, the elephant sense of smell is really spectacular. It's extraordinary. They were they were smelling us when we were in that observation tower, which was part of why they were so shy to come out, because they associate humans with threats because, you know, they were being poached at large numbers. So I had to like not wear like anything, you know, I'm used to putting on lotion and perfume and everything. I had to wear absolutely nothing to minimize my human smell as much as possible there.
Fascinating. I know I'm Canadian, so we don't have any elephants here, but for our Indian classrooms, if you ever get the chance to see an elephant in the wild, that is one of the most... Jai, you've seen elephants in the wild, yes?
I've seen plenty, and I'll be seeing day after tomorrow again. I'm in jungle. I'll be in Nagarhole,
Oh,
so with the school group. So, Mariah, I would like to ask you some questions, basically for the interest of children, because my job is to motivate them and inspire them to get spoiled rather than just looking at engineering or medical or certain careers. And wildlife is amazing, as I've also been into this for over 25, 30 years. So, what motivated you and what keeps you going? This will be one of the questions. And then, secondly, like how do you pursue, say, the cost of, say, approximately when you start, or you want me to take up one question at a time? I can do that, or probably
two's
how
fine.
Yeah.
What motivates you is pretty easy.
Mhm.
The second one. So,
because there are some more questions, so
yeah, yeah,
probably
yeah.
one part you can ask
We'll
answer.
start with motivate then, and we'll come right back.
Start with motivate. I mean, I just briefly, my background was like, I knew pretty young, like when I was in high school, that I wanted to do something with film. So I studied film when I went to university. And it was just right at the end of university that I actually was sad about leaving school and not learning anymore, which is how I thought of it. And I'm like, how do I combine film and learning? And then documentaries kind of seemed like the obvious choice. And then the way I got into wildlife in particular is I did some eco volunteering trips several places around the world, and that it helped me learn about a lot of the pressing conservation issues that are, you know, global in terms of pressures on biodiversity loss, wildlife trafficking and poaching. And then I decided, you know, I really want to spend my career telling these stories and telling the stories of the people who are trying to protect these animals. So my motivation continues every time I meet those people and see those animals in the wild. I would say that's a pretty easy way to keep renewing my motivation.
I would say so. It's the coolest job in the world to get to help share these stories. And Jai, I'm going to come back to you in 2 quick seconds, but I want to note for our students today, especially if you're older students, one of the best organizations if you want to get fieldwork experience, filming experience, get work out in the field in some really spectacular locations is Operation Wallace. I remember when I was in university as a biology graduate, their posters were everywhere. Tons of my colleagues went on adventures like this. And we've got a speaker joining us later this week who just recently got back from one of these special expeditions. So maybe in your future, as a way of sort of getting your feet wet in the field, they do some really wonderful work. Jai, come on back in for another
Yeah,
question.
that's wonderful, and I believe, yes, the motivation always keeps us passionate and fit. And the next thing will be like, how long approximately is the investment of time and in say initial investment of money when somebody has to take up this documentary filmmaking? Because I also wanted to go into that, but I'm into education, so I use photography and nature education and interpretation, the connection of the real world biodiversity and all. So how long does it take to establish yourself, and approximately initially how much a person has to invest?
Gosh, it's so hard to answer because there is not one answer. So, okay, so for instance, and this will also answer like another question I see in the chat. I'll talk a little bit about Silent Forest, but I'd say overall, there's no one number or one amount of money that you need to make a film. Making a film can be very expensive. It can also be very, very cheap. You just pick up a camera, film. If you can edit yourself, then it actually cuts the cost a lot. I'd say if you're looking just to get into filmmaking, you know, pick a camera and start filming and film a story you love. Learn some of the tools to put the film together, and it probably, you know, wouldn't take a lot of resources at all to do that outside of the initial investment in getting gear or paying somebody who has a camera to film. For Silent Forest, I started out kind of funding the first shoot myself, and then I applied for a lot of grants for funding the rest of the program. And then I also did a crowdfunding campaign. But in terms of documentary financing, there's a lot of different ways of raising money. I also get hired on shows that are already been greenlit. So those already have a budget in place, and there I'm not involved with the putting together the money for it. But in terms of time, and this gets more to the question in the chat about how long did we take to film the elephants, we filmed 3 shoots in Africa, 2 in Cameroon, 1 in Congo Brazzaville. Each shoot was about 4 weeks long, but that we were filming in the cities as well as in the bush. So I'd say in the bush we were probably there for maybe a total of 2.5 weeks. In a perfect world, I would have liked to be there a lot longer, but money is a constraint, and we didn't have enough budget to stay out there as long as I wanted. So you have to kind of be creative as a filmmaker to figure out, how can I get what I need in the amount of time and money I can afford? That's really always what it comes down to.
I love a couple things in this answer. One is that almost every photographer we bring on this broadcast has a piece of advice to just pick up a camera and start shooting. Like, really, it's a field where you can train, you can do professional certifications, and you've had the opportunity to learn from some of the best in the world to do a lot of these things. But I really start from scratch, start with your camera and see what comes of it. And what's nice nowadays too is that it's so much easier to access fantastic films that are being made around the world. So you can learn the craft in part by watching how other people go about telling stories on camera, which is something that simply wasn't possible before things like YouTube, before really easily accessible documentaries. And increasingly around the world, we're starting to see fantastic photographers and filmmakers coming from a truly global backdrop, which is so exciting. Jai, I'm going to come back to you, man. You're asking great questions. Go for it.
Yeah, thanks, Mariah. I think because I'm putting it everything from the perspective of children. I try to guide them and motivate them to take up these careers in ecology and wildlife. So it's like they have to look at the angles what you have shown in the documentary. Like, one is the security part, second is the trafficking part, third is the conservation part, fourth is the education part. So everything is covered under one umbrella with these documentaries. So we are able to highlight not just the issues, but also suggest solutions, or probably create an awareness about those poor animals or the speechless animals, and show the world, yes, they need care or they need their attention. So that's what I would also like to add there, and that's a fantastic job of what you're doing. Anytime you are in India, you need some support on, say, I'm excellent tracker of elephants, tigers. I've been doing this for 28 years, 30 years,
Nice.
and maybe calls or sounds or maybe the pug marks of movement. And my kids are getting experts. Some are entomologists, some are ornithologists, some are into tigers, some are into just butterflying or birding in the city. So I've got the youngest ornithologist in my team also, who is just in class 7th. He's a certified ornithologist. So that way we just keep motivating. That's the right way. So
That's awesome. Oh, actually, before I forget, you guys probably maybe use this already. Do you know the app called iNaturalist?
yes.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I live in New York, which is a very dense urban area, but yes, thank you, Jesse. I use iNaturalist all the time, especially when I travel or if I'm just seeing flora or fauna or a plant or something around here. I'll take a picture and be like, okay, what is this? And then you have a log of all the nature that you've seen
Yes.
around places. Yeah.
In fact, I've got a few students who have crossed, say, 2,000, 3,000 observations on iNaturalist. One is Arush, one is Karthik, and they all will be here, if not in their studies. So I keep fighting with their parents to spoil them.
Perfect. Best spoiling in the world. I love that you can use it to find wildlife around the globe. I mean, when I was a kid, if I wanted to know what animals lived in New York, I would have to find a New York wildlife guide somewhere, order it. It would cost a lot of money. And now in 2 seconds for free, I can go to iNaturalist, look up New York City and see all the wildlife, the most common animals, where you can find them, what the best parks are for finding wildlife. I can meet other people that love wildlife as much as I do. I can find your students that have 2,000 observations. And it's such an extraordinary tool and sort of society now where people are so able to share this love of wildlife and nature. So I'm so glad we brought it up. Thank you, Mariah.
I think, Jesse, if you remember the backyard bio, how many observations we had from our kids.
We're gonna 2023. We're doing backyard bio again. We're gonna have kids all over the world. I'm very excited about that.
Fantastic.
We've had a few questions in the chat, so I just want to make sure we get those for you, Mariah. Do you have a favorite animal, and why is your favorite? Is it your favorite animal if you have one?
This is always the hardest question. What a good question. I think I guess I'll go with what I've said for a while since making Silent Forest. I think it has to be the elephant, although it could change at any time. I really struggle to pick a favorite, but elephants they're so interesting. They have a matriarchal society, so it's the mother who kind of leads the herd, and they're very social, they're very intelligent, they're very sensitive animals. I think their behavior is fascinating. And I also learned when filming with the biologist Clement a little bit about their communication, because he records the sounds they make. And there's a project called the Elephant Listening Project that takes all these recordings of elephants, mostly forest elephants, and tries to interpret their language and interpret their communications with each other. What do certain sounds and cries mean? So yeah, I have to say elephant, but dolphins are a close second.
Is there any specific animal or place that you'd really like to film that you haven't had the chance to yet? Like, where would the next perfect adventure be in a perfect world for you?
I've been working on a film the last few years about ocelot rehabilitation in Peru, and I would love to get down there to that wildlife rescue center and see it in person, because my role on that project has been much more like remote, like doing things to help push the project forward from home. So I would love to get down to this place. It's in the Peruvian Amazon, and they do a lot of wildlife rehabilitation. And that's actually another career I would definitely encourage students to consider, is wildlife rescue and rehabilitation, because the more I film with people who do that work, wildlife veterinarians, for instance, the more I'm just blown away. And there's actually a film that's making a big splash right now and getting a lot of attention and awards, called All That Breathes, and it's about two wildlife rescuers in India. I cannot remember which city they're in, I apologize, but they rescue kites, which are birds of prey. So kites that have been injured, or they have a broken wing, they rescue them, and the film is all about their work. So once that's out, I'm sure it'll be out on a streaming platform soon. I would encourage you to watch that.
Yeah, I'm bringing this up for everybody too. So it's All That Breathes. It's in New Delhi. Really encourage classes to check that out. And for people that are interested on broadcasts with rehabilitators and sort of wildlife rescue, we've actually got one next week. Sandcob in South Africa rescues penguins and helps release them back into the wild. So they're very, very fun. They're one of our partners we haven't had on in like 3 years. So we're really excited to have them back very, very shortly. Jai, I'm going to head back to you for a couple more questions. Time flies and you're having fun. So we're going to wrap up our broadcast soon. But if you've got a few questions to end off with, come on in.
Yeah, on the rhino part, I would like to know more. Like, I was expecting that you will be presenting some slides on the Indian rhino project. So what was your overall experience, and how do you feel the conservation activities are going on there? I'm very much aware of the development there. So from your side, what is your experience there?
Yeah, sorry I didn't include that in the slideshow. That project was actually, I was just thinking about it this morning. It was 10 years ago already that I was filming there. I can't believe how long ago. So it was a little while. So that's why I hadn't included that. But basically, I went to Kaziranga Park in 2012 and 13 and filmed there primarily with a journalist in the area named Tom Saikia. And he does really good conservation work. And his role was kind of as a mediator between the Parks Department and the poachers, to try to encourage poachers to stop poaching and potentially give up their guns to the Parks Department, and potentially get either like a little compensation or employment from the Parks Department as an encouragement to get out of that practice of killing the rhinos. Now, this was a situation a decade ago. I think things have actually, the Asian rhino story in Kaziranga is one of the conservation success stories. The population there has actually gone up. Some of the methods being used to discourage poaching were questionable, and sometimes there was some, more extreme tactics being used, and some some more harsh measures being taken that there was a little controversy around, I know. So part of my interest was to explore that in the film, but I ended up just kind of making a truncated version, making a short film focusing on this man who's a member of the community trying to foster more understanding and mediate between poachers and park department to avoid rhinos getting killed, but also to avoid poachers getting killed in the park, because that was kind of happening a lot too. So, yeah.
Jolly, do you have one more for us before we wrap up and say farewell?
So what would be your advice to children today? And because again, we are looking at, say, climate change, global warming, all that big terms. But I feel the conservation of biodiversity is more important and topmost, I think, priority of world over. Otherwise, we are in dire straits. So what is your version on that?
I mean, I think first of all, these things are connected, right? Like the loss of biodiversity is not a separate problem from things like climate change. They're all intertwined. As we lose ecosystems to climate change, we're losing space and land for animals to roam. As we lose these keystone species that help to make ecosystems healthy, that's causing the land to be compromised. So I think it's kind of like a one world health perspective that we need to have. Like, how do we conserve both species and ecosystems at the same time? How do we live our lives so that we're not doing anything that's going to exploit animals unnecessarily? I think we have to be conscious about our consumption of animal goods, both like, eating animals regularly in our diets, maybe scaling a little bit back on that because of the, cost it has on our lands, but also making sure that in no way we are participating in any kind of like animal trafficking or wildlife trafficking, and just making sure that we know where products are coming from. I do see a couple of good questions.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we got these great 2 questions. If you've got time for them, we can.
Yeah.
I'll read them out to the people on YouTube and Facebook and see them too. But Locrianth wants to know, what's the composition of a normal filming team? How many specialists? Are there doctors or veterinarians accompanying you? We'll answer that first, and I'll take the second one in a minute before we wrap up.
Okay, cool. So anyways, basically my last answer, I don't know. It's a hard question to answer, but I think we always have to have hope. Oh, and I know the thing that gives me the most hope actually is kids, and seeing how much kids care about saving the planet and saving wildlife. So actually, you guys are the ones that give me the most hope. So sorry, I had to finish up that answer first. So, okay. So what's the composition of a normal filming team? It totally varies. Like, for my films, it's usually me and one other person. Like, I'm the director, producer. I bring a cinematographer along. Maybe we have a third person if we need extra assistance. But for my own like personal films, I keep it really small because my budget's usually pretty limited. I've also been on shoots for programs that have full funding where there's like 8 or 9 or 10 of us, because we have 2 cameras and sound and production assistants and translators depending on where we are. So it really varies. I mean, if you're talking about like a Planet Earth BBC thing, some of those crews are a lot bigger, although sometimes they'll just send one person out into the wild for 3 or 4 weeks to capture one particular shot. So yeah, I think it kind of depends on the circumstances and the budget. We don't normally have doctors or veterinarians accompanying the film crew, but we would potentially be filming with doctors or veterinarians, but they wouldn't be part of the film crew. So I think that's.
And then we'll take our second one. So I know we're getting a ton of questions all of a sudden. We're going to take one more big one before we wrap up, folks, and then people can check out your website, Instagram. They can reach out there if people are keen to learn more and get in touch.
Sure.
But I love this question again from Locrianth. How do you manage to power the film equipment? So you're in the middle of the jungle. You don't have a power grid. How do you keep these things going when you're out there?
So for the Silent Forest film, where we really didn't have any access to power, we actually had we had a car battery that we brought out. We hired people to carry out really heavy car battery, and we kind of rigged up a charging station from that car battery to power our camera batteries and our cell phones. And that was amazing. I've never seen anything quite so MacGyvered. I don't know if that like term means anything to anyone here, but it was very impressive. Yeah, you gotta get creative. Sometimes solar chargers are another way to power things if you're out in the bush and you have no access to an electrical grid.
I was going to say, most expeditions we've ever featured in this program, you'll see people with their big backpack on, and they'll have a solar panel strapped onto the back that's charging all their devices that are plugged into it. But that only works if you have smaller things. If you need something big, you need car battery MacGyver stuff going on.
Exactly.
Mariah, I know we could chat all day, and I love the enthusiasm of all our students. Again, I want to note that you are very easy to find online if people want to learn more about your expeditions, watch your films, get in touch. You've got some spectacular social media programs and silentforest.com. I want to make sure people get the chance to check that out. It's a really amazing film. Jai, I'm going to bring you back in just to say thank you so much. If people want to learn more about your work, I know these students are familiar with you, but you do such extraordinary stuff to introduce kids to nature, and I'm so thrilled to be able to partner with you on this new broadcast series with Mariah as our first exciting speaker today. Is there any last message that you'd like to share, Mariah, with kids? And then Jai, I'll turn it to you for the same question, and we'll wrap up from there. Mariah first.
I would say just like keeping a curiosity about the natural world around you is great. And I think that, just being out in nature, getting to know the ecosystem around you and becoming an expert in it. And also, if you have the opportunity to travel and see nature elsewhere, that's the best way to just keep your own curiosity flowing, and either being in front of the camera, behind the camera, even having nothing to do with the camera and just rescuing animals, like whatever, like we need all the help we can get to help save the planet. So yeah, thank you.
Jai, anything from you?
Yeah, I think I'll just add to what she said. It's the perfect way. Like, you always let the kid be alive in you and be curious and enjoy it. Like, I never get bored. I never get tired. I think Jesse sees my post every day, and I'm running late. I have to post about 5 events which had happened last week. So it's like, so I keep advising the children also the same thing. Like, keep very young heart and keep the curiosity very high on your priority, so that when you're going anywhere, when you're doing anything, automatically that respect and love for nature will come, and that will make you passionate about it. So you can select, and today it's like, I keep again giving examples, like it's not necessary that a biologist has to be a conservationist. You can be an artist, you can be an engineer, do machine learning or AI used into conservation. You can be a biologist or microbiologist. You can be an engineer, do camera traps or drones. All fields are connected. It's a STEAM or STEM learning, whatever we call it. So it's not that don't limit yourself to just 1 or 2 subjects. Specializations are for your interest and for your understanding. Rest, everybody has to care for nature, and it's a very high topmost priority for all of us. So I keep guiding them and pushing them into that. We are doing carbon mapping, we are doing water testing, a lot of things now, all practical projects going on with the theories. So they are all enjoying biodiversity mapping of campuses, local gardens, local forest. So like that's the guidance I just want to give them. Like, enjoy your work and you'll never feel bored and tired.
This is why I'm so jolly, is I get to hang out with people like you two every day. Mariah, Jai, thank you so much for making this broadcast possible, for being our first guest expert. Again, I hope everyone takes the chance to learn more and keep the excitement going, and we'll end our broadcast